Hey guys, I'm back just for a quick minute. I want to share just a short Bible verse with you, maybe a devotional. I'm not sure what it'll be, but it is something that is probably one of the most important things in my walk to remember and to go back to when I'm not feeling like I'm strong in the Word, or I'm not feeling like I'm doing a whole lot of good in this fan on, doing a whole lot of good for anybody around me or myself. And we all go through these times of not feeling like what the Bible says is fruitful. But in this passage, we're going to see that Jesus is calling us to Him, to be closer to Him, because He is what is going to give us what we need to be fruitful, not only for ourselves, but to all those around us, including our families. But He uses the example of a tree, a grapevine. And if you think about it, like, so say you have a lemon tree, and when you first plant that lemon tree, there's not much to it but a twig and a stem, right? But it connects and it's rooted to something, and deep down there it's getting nourishment and it's getting fed, and all this nourishment and feeding is going to eventually produce a tree, right? And it's going to have branches, and those branches will eventually come to be your lemons, right? And this is what the purpose of this tree eventually will be, is to be fruitful, to give off fruit. Now it's purposeful, right? So all of a sudden you go from having looking like you don't have much to give to the world, but then you're fed correctly and you're nourished correctly and you're loved correctly, and somebody puts you into a bigger pot and starts to grow you, and your roots grow down deeper, and all of a sudden you have this solid understanding, this solid life, this source that has grown you. And Jesus is telling us that when we connect to Him, when we get to a place where we are looking to Him to be our source of nourishment, our source of life, that we will then be fruitful ourselves. And I know sometimes we don't feel like we're of much fruitfulness, like we're not producing much for others to be to others to take advantage of, or for others to enjoy. But let me tell you, Jesus is telling us right here in the scripture, and I'm going to read it to you. It says, and this is 15:5 of John. It's John 15:5, right? And it says this, it says, "Yes, I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. Anyone who does not remain in me is thrown away like a useless branch and withers. Such branches are gathered into a pile to be burned. But if you remain in me and my words remain in you, you may ask for anything you want and it will be granted. When you produce much fruit, you are my true disciples. This brings great joy and glory to my Father." Man, there are times in our life when, like I said before, we don't feel real fruitful, right? We don't feel real purposeful. But when we remain in Jesus, when we come back to our source of life, He gives us everything we need to re-nourish, to replenish, to re-encourage, and to give us life back into the places that are dead. And at the beginning it says, "I am the true gardener. I am the true grapevine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch of mine that doesn't produce fruit, and He prunes the branches that do bear fruit, so they will produce even more." So see, Jesus is wanting to prune some things from our life. Maybe He's wanting to prune some old habits, some addictions. Because how can we be fruitful if our source is somewhere else besides Him, right? How can we be fruitful to our family if drinking has become more of a focus, or more of a and right now I'm testifying, I'm telling you why I stopped drinking. If I had a Thursday off, you better believe I was going to be drinking about a 12-pack to an 18-pack on Wednesday night, because I get to be hungover tomorrow. Well, guess what? That next day, I was no good to my boys. I was no good to my little girls. I was no good to my wife. Why? Because I was hungover. And so how fruitful of a father was I at that point? And that is my testimony. That is my story. Those are the things that he wanted to prune from me. Addictions, other addictions, like chewing. Those are things that he pruned for me. And it's amazing how sometimes this pruning will be difficult, because sometimes God's going to need to prune some things that are really close to home. And sometimes those things are going to maybe be friends. And you want to stay in relationship with the people you love and the people that you're accustomed to, right? Because it's familiar and it's comfortable. But as we grow with God, we will find that there are going to be very, very uncomfortable situations that he will put us in, because he's trying to grow us. And in many ways, he's going to be pruning us. He's going to be pruning, like I was getting to this idea of pruning maybe our friends. Because maybe he needs us to be by ourselves to put in us what we need to be fruitful once again. Right? Maybe the atmosphere around us, the workplace that we're at, maybe he's pruned your job from you because it was a toxic place for you to live, to spend most of your waking hours at. And maybe you're looking at it as a curse or something that, why me? Why is this happening to me? But maybe the question is, how can I look at this from a way of, what is God wanting to do in this? Why has he taken this one thing or allowed this certain situation to happen to me? And could it be because he's trying to regrow me? Maybe he's trying to prune some things off my life in order for me to see that my source wasn't that job. My source of being efficient or being purposeful in life wasn't that job or that career or that group of friends. That wasn't what made me. What makes me is coming back to my Creator, coming back to the one who authored my life in the first place. The Bible says that when God created man, he molded the man with dust, and then what did he do? He blew life into him. And maybe God is wanting to re-energize you, blow some life back into you in those dead places. And so how do we do that? Well, we come back to Jesus. We come back to our source of life, the true vine. And at the end it says, I have told you these things so that you will be filled with my joy. Yes, your joy will overflow. And maybe somebody's saying, well, how can Jesus have overflowing joy? Wasn't he beaten, mocked on, spit on, crucified, like hung on a cross, bled out to die? That's all very true. But when we know and we remember, we reflect, and we have communion to get back to the place of why those things had to happen, it's so that he could then rise again, so that he could defeat death on our behalf, so that he could give us this life and this eternal connection to a life source, so that we can have joy where it seems like there is no joy, so that we can have new life where it seems like our old life was just a routine. Getting up, going to work, coming home, cookie dinner, feeding the kids, going to sleep, and repeat, and repeat. And over time, it's like sometimes that doesn't feel like joy. That feels like a routine, right? It feels like something like going through the motions. But once we get connected to a life source, once we get connected to Jesus, man, you'll see that there is joy in making food for your children. There is joy in watching them grow, and watching them feel something that they've never felt before, because their parents now are connected to a life source, and it becomes contagious now, and it overflows, right? The Bible says, yes, your joy will overflow. Guess who it overflows into? It overflows into them. The joy you get from Jesus overflows into everybody around you. And man, what a victory that is, right? So anyways, I know that's a lot in just a few verses, but so important to just remember that Jesus is our life source, and he will always have enough. He will always have enough to give us that overflow. Okay? He doesn't run out. He doesn't run out of love. He doesn't run out of mercy. He doesn't run out of his constant overflow of grace. And that grace gets in us, and guess what? We get to overflow that too. Amazing stuff. Anyways, pray on that. Ask God what he may be wanting to prune for your life today. Ask him, just have a conversation with him. Ask him, God, what sources am I depending on in this world to get my life from, to get my joy from? Where are those sources? And maybe those sources need to be pruned. God, how do I do that? I'll be praying for you as well. God bless you. Thank you for signing on. We'll see you later, okay? Bye.